Hi, my name is Carole Baskin, and I am the founder and CEO of Big Cat Rescue. Today on our show will be Justine Mikolaitis, and she received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Spanish Business Cum Laude from Sweetbriar College. During her tenure there, she spent a summer living in Mexico, studying at La Autónoma de Guadalajara. Yeah, obviously I don't speak Spanish. Ms. Mikolaitis went on to earn her Juris Doctor along with a Certificate of Advocacy from Stetson University College of Law, which is consistently ranked by U.S. News and World Report as being the premier trial advocacy program in the nation. While at Stetson, Ms. Mikolaitis was selected to serve as federal litigation intern at the United States Attorney's Office, as well as state judicial intern at the 13th Judicial Circuit Court. As Phi Alpha Delta's Administrative Vice Justice, she chaired the annual opening statement and closing argument competitions. Upon graduation, Ms. Mikolaitis attended University of Miami School of Law, where she was awarded her Master of Laws in Inter-American Law. Before hanging out her own shingle, Ms. Mikolaitis spent approximately 4 years practicing civil litigation with two well-known Miami law firms. At the first, she spent a majority of time devoted to defending tire companies in high-exposure products liability cases. Ms. Mikolaitis went on to work in a general civil liability litigation practice group, gaining insurance experience. Ms. Mikolaitis is a member in good standing with the Florida Bar and was recently appointed to its Animal Law Committee. As part of the perennial award-winning Young Lawyer section of the Dade County Bar Association, known as the YLS, Ms. Mikolaitis has proposed the YLS's involvement with the Animal Law Defense Fund. On a national level, Ms. Mikolaitis is a member of the American Bar Association Tort and Trial Insurance Practice Section, Animal Law Committee. Ms. Mikolaitis is licensed to practice law before all county and state courts within Florida, in addition to the United States District Courts for the Middle and Southern Districts of Florida. And what I'd like to know first is how to pronounce your last name, Justine.
Well, it is pronounced Mikolaitis. It's practically unspellable for everyone, but it's Lithuanian. And I'm a quarter Lithuanian, a quarter Ukrainian, a quarter French, and a quarter Polish.
Wow. Well, that's quite a combination. Definitely the melting pot here in America. And I imagine we have guests from all around the world because our support base is from all around the world. And one of the things I hear quite frequently from other countries is that they just cannot believe the way we treat animals here in America, that we don't have laws that protect them better than what we do. So that's why I think they will really love hearing from you and hear about some of the stuff that you're doing in kind of the groundbreaking arena of trying to protect animals.
Well, Gandhi, I believe, was credited with saying that a society, like one of the telltale signs of a civilized society is by looking at the way they treat their animals there. And that just made me horrified because...
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's like, well, I thought we had lived in a civilized society, but based on that, I don't know.
Well, tell me, you work in animal law, and as you mentioned to me in an email prior to this show, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what does the term animal law mean in your world?
Okay, well, animal law is not animal welfare. It's more about obtaining rights for for animals. So it's the big cat rescue is something that I admire, and I think that that's amazing what you're doing. But what I'm trying to do is from the legal end, which is apparently why I went to law school. It turns out, and my dad would be horrified if he knew that. Yeah, I'm kind of paving my own way with this, and I've just opened a boutique animal law practice, South Florida's first, in Coral Gables, the Grove, Miami area, and it was actually because my acupuncturist had a problem with her dog. And she came to me and she said, I know you can help me. And my experience had been representing tire companies. I was the girly girl in my family who represented tire companies. And gosh, was it a blast, honestly. And so I went from being a products liability defense lawyer to a plaintiff's lawyer, doing animal law, which no one really had ever heard of. And she said, there must be something you can do to help me. I had taken my dog in for an operation, and they put him on heating pads for 5 straight days, and he was also given painkillers, so he did not feel his skin being seared layer by layer by layer.
Oh gosh.
And I've not had a lot of experience with big dogs, so the size of these burns are markedly larger than any dog I'd ever had. So he was basically discharged from the vet with these weird black streaks that turned out to be 3rd-degree thermal burns, and so the skin just it died and it fell off, and it left him very deformed. And you know, she had this dog, she rescued him, she had him for 13 years, and it was, she said, I know you can help me. And I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do? You know, what kind of experience do I have with this? Well, I got some. I acquired lots of books, and I did a lot of research, and I wrote a demand letter to these folks, and they, didn't even really dignify the very small demand that we made. Which was more, it's not about the money to her, it's more about the point. And they completely missed the point. And the funniest part was that I had cited in there some law from a seminal case here in Florida, in which that clinic was the defendant in a lawsuit 30 years ago for burning
oh my goodness,
dogs. So I just thought, man, really? So I told them that that they could just close their file and wait to reopen it when they were served with a complaint. So I wrote a complaint, and I never realized how much work that took to write a complaint. Because as a plaintiff's lawyer, you essentially have to have your whole case right there before, you know, you even tell anyone you think you have a case and file it in court. So this is, you know, litigation that's occurring right now. It's the first lawsuit that I've actually filed, and it's a very personal thing for me, because around the same time that my acupuncturist, and I don't say that to be callous, but I don't want to use her name and her dog's name just for, you know, I don't need that all over the web, or she doesn't need that. But it's very personal to me, because around the same time that this happened, my mom's 18-year-old Silky Terrier had passed away. And this little animal, she was so spoiled. I called home one day and I said, well, so Mom, what are you doing? She said, I'm making dinner. I said, and what are you making? She said, well, for the puppy, and Silky was 18 and she's still the puppy, I am making poached chicken and rice. And I said, well, what are you giving Dad? And she said, well, he can have a Salisbury steak out of the freezer. And I thought that was just the funniest thing. She was just the love of my mother's life. And when she died, she was initially my sister's dog, which they gave her Silky when my sister was 10. And my sister is a brilliant creative writer and a lawyer, doing tax controversy work for one of the world's largest top 10 law firms, just in the whole wide world. So I imagine that her literary creative side doesn't get seen that much. But before she had developed that, she had aptly named Silky Terrier Silky, so that was her name. She was Silky Mikolaitis. And my mom had taken her to the vet because Silky was experiencing renal failure one day, and they said, well, you know, we'll have to put her down. And my mom said, is she in any pain? And the vet said no. And my mom said, well, but are you sure? And they said yes. My mom said, look, I had not intended to bring her here today with the intent of putting her to sleep. May I kindly bring her back first thing tomorrow? Pretty promise, you know, and everything. Oh. Well, Silky spent the night on Mom's bed like she did every night, and the angel of death came by for Silky at 4:10 a.m., so my mom didn't have to make the decision to put her down the next day. So we sent flowers, and my mom gave a dried rose to me, and I've had this locket. My grandmother gave it to me when I was born, and in the last 30 years, well, you know, absent a war and stuff, what do you keep in a locket? I mean, who really has worn a locket? And now Tiffany wants to display them in every catalog, and but I keep a dried petal in my locket to remind me that this is why I do this, because it's what I do is different than I know at the beginning of the week you met with Jennifer Dietz, who is awesome.
I love Jennifer.
Oh, well, you have no idea how she plays into this story. But she'll be on in another couple episodes, and the viewers can get to know her and what she does. But what I am doing essentially is trying to get non-economic damages for people who experience the loss of a companion animal. And
what exactly is that?
Well, since 1400 England, and our laws come from there, pets were always considered property for which you could only recover the value of the pet. And a 13-year-old mutt from, that you got from the pound means the whole wide world to my client, but in dollars, probably isn't worth a whole lot. But like my mom, that animal was her companion, and there's pain and suffering, and there's just a lot of emotional things that you can't recover for an animal. And it's only been recently that lawyers have started to really bring this to the forefront of the court system. Well, I didn't really know anything about this other than what is animal law, what kind of complaint do I file, what do I do? So I went back to Stetson, which is where I went to law school, and they have an amazing library and an amazing staff.
So this was after you had already graduated and you've been
10 years
practicing
later.
Law? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I go back to Stetson 10 years later, where my brother currently goes. And I ran into a librarian, Ashley Krenelka. And I said, I am trying to file a lawsuit on, on this animal law case. And she looked at me like, gosh, I don't happen to have any examples or forms or really a whole lot of books about that. But here's this email address of an adjunct professor on our faculty, Jennifer Dietz. Kindly give her, just email her right quick. I said, okay. So I'm in the stacks at the library sitting on one of those step stools, and I take out my phone, and dear Professor Dietz, she got back to me in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And she had offered to spend the next afternoon with me having lunch and discussing these issues.
How awesome is that?
It was just like, of course this happens at my law school. So I'm very good friends over there with Dean Kristen Adams. She's the dean of academics, and she's doing a great job. And they've developed a network for solo practitioners where you can get a lot of assistance from them, like research assistance. I mean, all kinds of assistance if you're just a solo practitioner, because they want you to succeed. And so I largely credit Kristen Adams for that. So, but Ashley Krenelka and I stay in touch, and I let her know that I filed my lawsuit on this, and so that's I think that's my background story.
Wow.
Did that answer your question? I don't even remember the question. I'm sorry to say.
Well, it was pretty much, how did you get started? Because it looked like from your resume that you had online that you didn't specifically go to college to study law in order to protect animals, but you seem to have seen that there is this huge need and obviously very scarce resources, to the point where your resource turned out to be a person.
And Jennifer Dietz has become a dear, dear friend to me. I mean, we speak practically every day, And I was very jealous when she said, and I'm taking my class to the big cat rescue. And I thought, well, I'm down here in Miami, gosh darn it. And so, but I do hope that on my next trip you will you'll welcome me, and I can get to see the years of work that you've done for, all the big cats. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? About how you got started? Because I don't really know.
Oh, wow. Actually, it was kind of like your story. It was just a situation where I ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time and realized that my late husband and I were at an auction where a bobcat was being sold by a guy who said his wife didn't want the cat any longer. She was 6 months old. And the guy next to me was bidding on this bobcat. And I had done bobcat rehab and release. So like if a bobcat gets hit by a car, the vet can get them fixed up in 30 minutes, but then it's months of rehab for them to go back to the wild, and bobcats are vicious. So I turned to the guy next to me and I said, "That's a bobcat. What are you doing bidding on that? That's not going to make a good pet." And he said, "Oh, I'm a taxidermist. I'll just club her in the head and then turn her into a den decoration and sell her." And so I started crying, and my husband started bidding, and we probably paid more for that bobcat than anybody's ever paid for bobcats in the history of bobcats. But we didn't know any better, and we weren't going to let her get clubbed in the head, so we came home with her. And she was a horrible pet, absolutely wicked, because that's what bobcats are. They spray all over the house, and they attack your children. And
Did you have children?
I have one, and she's been doing this with me since she was 12. She's 33 now.
Wow.
But instead of realizing what a horrible pet she was, my late husband decided he wanted one that would like him. And so he started calling around. And this guy said, "Well, I'll sell you a kitten, but you have to come in person and pick her up or pick it up." So we drove to Minnesota. My daughter was, like I said, 12 at the time. And it was a fur farm. And there were 56 cats there. And I asked the guy if there was this big of a market for them as pets. And he said, "Oh, no, whatever I don't sell as pets, we'll just slaughter next year for their fur." And so I started crying again. And my husband said, "How much for every cat here?" And we came home with 56 bobcats and lynx. And so that's how the sanctuary started. But it was just a situation where I think any animal lover would have said, if they had the resources, would have said, "All right, I can fix this." And that's kind of the approach we've taken. We can fix this problem. And so what we've done is we've bought all of the bobcats and lynx off of all of the fur farms in the United States. And there aren't any more out there, to my knowledge, that are killing cats for their fur. They still kill foxes and mink, but not cats.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So I love it when I see pioneers like you who are getting out there into a field where people are saying, probably, "You're crazy." You already said your parents are probably not really crazy about the idea of you taking on these pets that can't really pay much, or their owners probably that can't really pay very much compared to the kind of work you could be doing for large corporations and that sort of thing. So it's a huge, generous gift that you are giving of your knowledge.
Well, I couldn't have done this without the very generous sacrifice of my ex-boyfriend. He let me. I had fibromyalgia. He actually, he fell in love with me when I was very sick, and I said, "No, you don't want to date me because I'm sick, and you really don't want to." And he said, "No, but I assure you I do." And I moved in with him kind of by chance because the Mayo Clinic had referred me to this other clinic in Miami, and it was in fact his general practitioner who was able to solve the problem, not the Mayo Clinic, not
really?
And so I got back on my feet and I started working, and no one had heard of the law firm that I was going to be working for until I started, and then everyone was like, oh my gosh, it's such a mill, and and I was thinking, oh, well, great, I wish someone had told me that. So 7 months later, I just up and left. And so my boyfriend said to me, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I haven't gotten that far. And
that's a leap of faith. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not this.
Right. I'm not being paid enough to be abused every day, so it's not going to be that. And he stuck with me through this whole, coming up with this, I'm going to be an animal lawyer. And his family has been very, very supportive of this, and he let me stay home for a year and just research and just,
wow.
And he doesn't like clutter. And so the piles of the papers and the stacks of and the books and and I mean, the poor guy, so and his mother was very generous with me and continues to be, and I still think that even though I'm doing this in honor of my mother's companion, canine, she was the general counsel at Blue Cross and Blue Shield in Philadelphia before she retired, and my dad worked for representing Viking Yacht and then a bank. So, and my sister, who wanted to do the low-income represent the low-income taxpayer, she's now making more money than I will ever see at one of these top 10 largest firms in the world. And I'm the one who's saying, yes, I didn't really have a nest egg for this, but I'm jumping in with both feet, and Mike didn't let me drown. So
wonderful of Mike. Big shout out to Mike there. Thank you.
So but anyway, so that's so yeah, I spent a lot of time just trying to figure this out, and I think I've read all the books and all the articles and all the everything, and so now I'm, I have a website it's not the greatest website, but I'm working on putting together a better website that it's still going to have my last name in it, so people, I don't know how people will find it, but it was the best I could do on short notice. You know what I mean? Mikolaitis law was just all I could come up with, because I needed something for my client to be able to say, no, she's a legitimate lawyer. And I formed a limited liability company, which then I found out needed to be a professional limited liability company. So then thinking I was the lawyer, I could establish the LLC. Well, I didn't even know there was a PLLC component to this, so I had to then pay a lawyer to get it done for me, and poor Mike, and it's just, he's thinking, it's just been months now, and she just can't get this moving, and so I was so pleased to be extended, an invitation to come and interview with you, because this is kind of my big debut, and I called to let him know that that this was paying off, and he said, well, how is the lawsuit? And I said, well, I'm working on a motion now, or a response to a motion to dismiss, because, well, those kind of damages aren't allowed, says the other side. Well, we'll see about that. Because the Supreme Court in Florida in '64 said, this was a horrible case, a little dachshund, I think, was outside in the yard while her mom was making breakfast inside, and a trash collector came by and threw a trash can at this poor defenseless animal. The mom heard it squeak, and she had lost, you know, her dog, and the trash guy just was howling in laughter as he drove away. And this woman was just, I mean, she was so emotionally traumatized. And that's the first time that the Florida Supreme Court, in a case called LaPorte, said, we acknowledge that there is a bond between people and their pets. And, you know, given this kind of malice and this kind of extremely outrageous behavior, we think that people should be able to get pain and suffering and loss of companionship and different non-economic damages, as opposed to the economic damages, which would be the value of the animal. So, and then all the district courts of appeal have been split on whether to allow emotional non-economic damages in cases that don't involve malice and just outrageousness. But I think leaving a dog on a heating pad unattended, largely unattended, for 5 days, drugged up with painkillers so he can't feel what's, his skin being burned. I mean, I think that's pretty outrageous behavior. And so I filed a complaint for negligence, gross negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent infliction of emotional distress.
And how are those different from veterinary negligence?
Well, Florida does not actually have a cause of action for veterinary malpractice. They have a
other states?
Yes, but we don't. So I think that's something that that is gonna come up here in at the forefront of things sometime soon. But we don't currently. People say the vet malpractice and this and and sometimes they're really learned people, like animal lawyers who started the Florida Bar Animal Law Committee, and I don't really want to be like, hey, under Florida Statute 474, there's really not a cause of action for that. But I mean, I guess it goes forward as like a professional negligence thing or a professional malpractice thing. I'm not really sure, but there is no actual cause of action for that.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, we're working to change that. The list is so long of things that need to be changed. But I love this quote from Albert Schopenhauer. He was born in Poland. He was a German scholar, and I think he says that all. What does he say? That all.
This is a good time to Google.
Well, no. No, all truth passes through 3 stages. The first stage is ridicule. The second stage is violent opposition. And the third stage is that it's just accepted as self-evident. So I really think that once this, animal law becomes, more of an up-and-coming thing, because it bears on pretty much every conceivable kind of law. I mean, it crosses contract law, family law, I mean, custody cases, and contracts for, different kinds of, right now there's health insurance contracts that you can get health insurance for your pet. And what else? I mean, it just crosses every, area of the law. And so now they've just really recognized animal law as a substantive area of law in and of itself. And so I think now that it's been recognized as such, that it will be able to it'll start getting some speed and stuff, and people will go from, what do you mean they're just property, to, I mean, I was in the emergency room with my foot, and the guy said to me, oh, but all, pets are family. And I was thinking, I need a guy like this on my jury. I mean, but then I thought about it, and if you ask people, they think that their pets are family too.
Sure.
And that's why I think this has a shot. So I think that this will become accepted as a self-evident truth. And I do want to note that Albert Schopenhauer, I'm sorry, he did have poodles, whom he loved very much. So, and he was a big fan of, in London, when they came out with the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And he also applauded when Philadelphia, the Best Friends, Animals Friends Society was established. And this would have all been, in the early 1800s, because he was born in 1788. So, in Poland. I'd like to make another plug for Poland, if I may.
Did you see the movie Amazing Grace about Roger Wilberforce? I forget his first name, but he was known in London or England for opposing slavery, and everybody ridiculed him at first, and then they violently opposed him, and then it became like, well, of course we shouldn't have slaves. And he was also the person who started the Royal Society for the Protection of Animals, and so we're going through that same process that you mentioned of people thinking, well, that's crazy that animals should have protection under the law, to people really fighting it, like these ag-gag laws. I'm sure you've been studying up on that kind of stuff and how scary those are. But I think we're at that tipping point where it's just about to tip over the edge to where everybody understands, well, of course we should be able to protect animals under the law.
Right. And it's like women's rights, and the big women's movement, and gays and lesbians getting married. I mean, who thought that was going to happen? And now look, I mean, it's just, I think that this is going to be just like all of those things that everybody at first thought, no. And I really believe that that people are going to think about this, and it's going to result in some some very amazing law for that affects a lot of people and their pets. You know, Colorado actually just this was maybe a year ago. They awarded their biggest verdict in an animal law case, which included non-economic damages, because a cleaning crew was brought in to a house, and the mom said, "I'm going to take my daughter. We'll take the dog if that's, you know, if you don't want the dog here." And they said, "No, you can leave her." And then the mom said, "Well, just as long as you don't let her out." Well, and of course they went and they let her out. The dog got hit by a car in the street, and the cleaning crew brought the dog back into the house, placed it under the dining room table, and left.
Oh, no. Oh.
And the dog was dead. The dog died. Okay?
Oh.
And so the mom and her like teenage daughter come home, and this poor dog is dead under the dining room table. And the court in Denver said their verdict, they ruled that the owner of the dog was entitled to $65,000. And so while that's not, you know, the largest verdict that, you know, that if I was able to obtain, I could go retire somewhere, you know, nothing like that. But I think that's a huge step in the right direction, and I think it's huge that courts are being called on to decide issues about this now. So it really is coming to the forefront.
Do you think there will ever be, and I don't know enough about the law to know whether or not this is possible, but we face, in the big cat world, we face the issue that there is such a patchwork of state laws, and every state has different laws, and so people just, it's like whack-a-mole. They're moving from one state to another to avoid prosecution. With that, what we're trying to do is create a federal ban on the private possession of these cats, which would then work across all states.
Right.
Is there any element of the law that could be used to protect domestic animals in the way that you're talking about across all of the states in a federal type of thing, or is that always going to be a state issue?
I believe that, well, I mean, there is work that I do that I never really contemplated doing, but I've since become, I have quite a few clients who have come to me with, my condo association doesn't want me to have, you know, my emotional support dog, or my condo association doesn't want me to have my service animal. And the American with Disabilities Act and the Federal Housing Act, those are federal regulations that reach across, you know, state lines and say, hey, this is what you're entitled to, as far as, because these condo associations, some of them that I've dealt with personally, I mean, they want laundry lists of things in order to justify that, you know, a 9-year-old girl be allowed to have a service animal to help her as a mobility device. And you cannot imagine the just rigmarole that they want to put her through. And it's like, no, has no one read this updated memo from April of this year where it defines what a service animal is and what an emotional support animal is, and they're not considered pets for purposes of, you know, breed clauses in the contract, or pet weight limitations in the contract. So you could have a 75-pound, you know, service animal, and in a place where they don't allow pets, and that's because, well, the federal regulation says this is not to be considered a pet. And well, then other ones say, well, it's over the 25. You please appear before the fining committee. You will be fined for having an animal in excess of 25 pounds. I'm sorry, did we not read the memo either? Here, have a copy, and let's talk about this after you've had a chance to digest what's going on. And no, you're not entitled to her medical records ever since she was, you know, conceived, and, you know, all of her. I mean, you are entitled to very specific things, which are not a lot of things. What is it? The let's see. Yeah, just, I mean, it's for emotional support animals. It's like, does the person seeking the use to use and live with the animal have a disability? Yes. Does the person making the request have a disability-related need for the animal? Yes. I mean, that's all you really, I mean, you're not, they want notes, for, you know, stamped and notarized and ribboned and, you know, from all kinds of, and you're just not entitled to that. Especially, I love, the best part is if you know someone has, because emotional support animals are for people who, you know, have, those animals help them function. Like if they have depression, or, you know, like from an emotional standpoint. So they're not necessary from the point that they are able to, you know, act as a crutch or a mobility device or whatever, but they're necessary to people for their emotional well-being. And so maybe that's not obvious and apparent to the board. And so if it's not apparent, then, you know, maybe they get like a doctor's note or something saying, while it may not be apparent that this person needs, you know, an emotional support animal, you know, I've prescribed it because of X or Y. But for I just love how some boards say, well, but we didn't know this person had a disability. You know, they have to go around with a 75-pound dog in order to support themselves and keep them upright, and you didn't know that the person needing this animal had a really? You're going to look at me and tell me that, and then you want me to parade the person around the room to show you how disabled they are? No. No, no, no. So that's an area that I actually would like to become a lot more involved in, and I am very grateful for the opportunity to have had a couple of cases like this. And I just resolved one for. He's such a nice man. He's a vet, and he served our country, and I was able to resolve his case for him on Veterans Day.
Nice.
So that was, and I said, I have good news for you, and I let him know, and he said, "Oh, what a treat." And then, I thanked him, of course, because he thanked me profusely. "Oh, my fiance, she really needed this. Thank you so much." And I said, "But sir, thank you for, for serving our country." And it was a really rewarding experience for me. So
I recently took a flight to DC for some lobbying that we were doing, and in the seat next to me was a woman with her service dog, Simon. I love you, Simon. He was the nicest dog ever. He was so good, and he was this really big dog, so he had to kind of lay under both of us, which I was happy to have her do because he was such a delightful animal. But she was explaining to me all of the requirements that go into a service animal and how sometimes people will pay as much as $50,000 for these dogs because they've been so well trained. So it's not like somebody just, I don't think your clients are the kind of people that are saying, well, this animal is a service animal or an emotional support animal just so they can get around homeowner laws or condo laws. These are people that legitimately need these animals. And so I wonder, I know from the animal's perspective, there's a lot of certification that has to go on.
Yes.
They're the same for the person?
In the one case I do have, the girl needing the dog, she's under 10. So her mom was the dog's handler for the last several years that her daughter has needed the dog, and so it was the mom who did the training and the classes and stuff like that. But it's not so much that the people require the certification. It's more that the animal does. I mean, and some of these animals are certified to detect when someone is about to have a seizure. I mean, very acute sensory things, and no, I don't think that the person who has acquired a dog for purposes of being able to alert of an oncoming seizure is trying to get around the condo rules. So I'm just having a time, and I'm just very surprised by these condo associations. Everyone needs to live somewhere, and condos are great, and but I'm just, the ones that I've had personal experience dealing with have unfortunately been, they don't leave a real pleasant taste in my mouth after dealing with them. But I'm doing everything I can to help the people who need these animals. So,
what is the difference between a service animal and an emotional support animal?
Well, the emotional support animal is more for if someone's suffering from depression, that just having the company of the animal makes the person able to go about life in a more enjoyable sort of way that they otherwise would not be able to. Whereas a service animal, again, needs extensive training to be able to, like the one girl I was talking about, it's her ambulatory device. She has to walk with the dog to keep from stumbling, and so the dog, realizes that its purpose is to keep her upright, to be able to get her from a seated position to a standing position, to be able to serve as a balance if the girl needs to be balanced, and just slowly walk so that the girl can ambulate.
Does the law differentiate between these two different types of animals, service animals and emotional support animals?
Yes, they do, and that's why as I was saying, they get to ask you very specific things, and with an emotional support animal, they get to ask you about whether the person seeking to use and live with the animal has a disability, and then does the person making the request have a disability-related need for the animal. And those are really the only two questions you get. But for a service animal, the questions are about is this service animal is this a service animal that is required because of a disability? Yes. And what work or tasks has the animal been trained to perform? And some of these condo associations want certifications, and they want, well, you don't have to have a certification about saying it performs X and Y task. I mean, you don't have to produce that. That's private. It's private information that the condo association is not entitled to. So.
Do you have any current cases or settled cases that you've dealt with on this issue yet?
Well, yes, the one is with the vet that I was speaking of, the veteran, and I told him his good news on Veterans Day. That was his fiance needed an emotional support animal, and then I do represent the family with a girl who's under 10, and she needs the dog for a mobility aid. So, and this is, it's just bizarre that it's not, that it's taking so much to resolve that case, because she's under 10. She obviously needs the dog, and why do you want to, I mean, why do you want to parade around a child like that? And why do you want to, I mean, don't you think that family has enough to deal with?
Really?
Do you think they need, to all these emails and all the requests and all these, so I showed up at the board meeting and I took Jennifer Dietz, and that's when they were going to impose a fine for the pet exceeding the weight restriction set forth in the condo documents. And when we walked in, the board was like, "Oh, wow, this is way more serious than Their lawyer appeared by phone. He told me he was coming from a seminar about condo associations and these issues, and that's why he was at the airport. Yet he had no idea about this April 2013 memo put out by the DOJ saying, here's what you're allowed to request, and this is all they're going to give you. And I told him that I would be more than happy to speak with him after he had read the current and applicable law, which I did later. I did call to apologize that I hoped that he didn't take that badly, that I just wanted him to realize that the 6 pages of enumerated paragraphs with, a million different, things, was unreasonable. And he said, well, all we really thought we were going to get was a doctor's note. And I just so, but that's we're still trying to resolve that, and it's just a shame, because the last thing these people need to deal with is I mean that
kind of BS.
Yeah, and that's what it is. That's what it is. So, but if I can make their journey with this a little easier, then my job is, is done.
We're down to our last 7 minutes. So what could you tell us about pet trusts?
Pet trusts. Okay, well, I think everyone... I'm sorry?
First of all, what are they?
What are they? Okay, pet trusts are basically trusts that are established by a person who wants to leave funds of their estate to their animal, for the care and feeding of their animal after they pass away, and so it's kind of becoming more and more part of estate planning nowadays, as people want to leave money for the care and feeding of their animals. And you have to designate who you would like to be the caretaker of the animal, which I guess you would kind of hope that, if something, God forbid, happened to you, that your daughter would take over the big cats. And, but some people just don't want the response. They think, oh, my kids will just take the dog or the cat or whatever, and then they don't want to be bothered with the responsibility. So you have to designate someone who really wants the responsibility, knows they're getting the responsibility, and then pets traditionally cannot be the subject of a trust. So there's a beneficiary who is named that kind of doles out the money to the caretaker on an as-needed basis. And if someone leaves, let's say, like the hotelier Elena Helmsley, who left $11 million to her Maltese named Trouble, I think a lot of that money probably went back into the estate, because that's what happens when you you evaluate the money that's been left for the dog's care and feeding, and then if you determine that it's in no way possible to ever exhaust that amount of money taking care of the dog, then you would put that back into the estate. So I don't know that Trouble got all $11 million. But that's an extreme example. So
it really raised the awareness, because until she did that, a lot of people didn't know that was even possible. And so I think that's also a state issue, right? Some states you can, some you can't.
Right. It's now a Florida thing, where Florida law has had to be amended in order to accommodate for this, since property, as animals still are considered, cannot be the subject of a trust. They can't be the beneficiary of a trust because they're property. So, but the way Florida has done this, it's been allowed now. So.
Wonderful. And are these the type of clients that you would represent, people that want to leave their money to their animals?
I would love to. I really would love to. I'm kind of working on the Florida Supreme Court, as I was sitting at Stetson in their solo practice institute thing, learning about, how to open your own practice, the Florida Supreme Court came down with new advertising and marketing rules for lawyers. And I'm one of those, oh my gosh, the rules, the rules. And it took me 3 calls to the Florida Bar Ethics Hotline just to figure out what I could put on my business card. Okay, so
Man.
So I'm trying to reach out to these folks, but in an ethical manner, and I think that my new website is going to reflect that a little more.
And I actually loved your website. I thought it was beautiful. And
really?
I do the website for Big Cat Rescue, and we have 9,600 pages there. So it was nice to find a website that was very clean and efficient and to the point.
Well, I think that's been a criticism. Google can't spot you because you don't have enough content. And it's like, oh, content. All right. So that's kind of what I'm looking to kind of up the content, and I'm putting a blog. I'm kind of excited about the blog, and I don't know if it's possible to. First, I'd have to see what it looked like, but if it's possible to get a copy of this interview, and maybe
Sure.
I could upload that to the website.
Yeah, as soon as it's live, I'll give you the link, and you can embed that link or embed the entire video so that it plays on your site. And you could also have it transcribed so that it gives you a lot of content. You can probably pay somebody minimum wage to transcribe it, but then it has all of that content that you can put in and say this was the script from the show, and that helps give you a little bit more text that Google's looking for.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that suggestion. And you can get very good court reporters to transcribe your stuff, and they'll leave out all of your ums and your ahs, and so that would be good for me. I would benefit from that greatly. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, I just can't thank you
for having me.
It was my pleasure. And in the show notes for today's show, I will have a link to your website. So that'll give you a little bit more Google juice. Plus, people will be able to actually click on that link and go to your site. When I put it on on YouTube, I'll also include a link to the show notes there, which will then send people to your website.
Oh, thank you so kindly. I do appreciate that, and I do appreciate having the opportunity to meet you through the internet. But hopefully I'll get to meet you in person on my next trip to Tampa, and I'll have Jennifer take me on her next class trip with her and them to the Big Cat Rescue. And I appreciate everything.
Oh, thank you. To everybody else out there, thank you for joining us. I'm Carole Baskin, and this has been Cat Chat Show 31.